Given that our audience is primarily students, and we've been able to just now see excerpts from each of your three shows, could one or more of you talk us through pitch to pilot to what we just saw on the screen?
Holy moly. Well, that's...
Without taking up the whole hour.
Yeah, well, I mean, that would take up the whole hour to talk each one of these shows probably through the entire process. You know, it's different with every show, of course. And our involvement also differs on the different shows. Maybe Sarah should talk about the pitch part, because you were involved in that, but then I'd like to talk about what happened after that a little bit, just because with the clip you saw, which was the show Burn Notice, that's kind of where I came in. After the script was written, and then the same was true of a couple of the other shows that I've sort of been involved with from the beginning, and then we can all sort of pile in on the rest of the stuff.
Sarah?
Yeah, and the normal process, you know, is that a writer brings in an idea. Although again, that can happen anyway. I mean, sometimes networks have ideas that they actually pitch out to writers. Sometimes writers come in, you know, and they have their idea, you know, already. Sometimes there's a book or an article, you know, that people are interested in, the network is interested in, and then they hook up a writer in that way. So there's all different ways that an idea can come in. But basically, the idea comes in from the outside somehow. And, you know, the executive takes the meeting, and hopefully they love it, and they buy the pitch. And then, you know, the lawyers get involved and make the deal. And usually in the pitch, and just to talk about that for a second, what's involved, you know, people talk about the concept for the show, the characters in the show. They give some sense of where it's going to go over time. Often people will pitch a pilot story or some ideas of some kinds of episodes, so that, you know, the network executive has a pretty good idea of where it's going. Yeah, then make the deal, and then after the deal, basically, then you go to a real pilot outline, which would be, that's like the next step of the process. And basically notes are given at sort of each step. So notes are given on the outline, then the first draft comes in. And
they can be given by the network and also the studio in conjunction with the network if it happens to be that arrangement.
Yeah, there are sort of two different ways. Sometimes it's directly with the network, but often, particularly with broadcast networks, there is a studio involved. So you sort of have that company that's producing the show for the network. So sometimes you're having two levels of notes and sometimes just one level of notes. But yeah, the first draft, and then usually there's second draft and third draft. And I mean, again, that can differ. Sometimes people will work on a show for, you know, a long, long time, and sometimes like the first draft is like, yes, let's make it. And then basically you get a green light, hopefully at a certain point, to go to pilot. And that's when all the other people get brought on board. Sometimes directors get attached earlier, or talent would be attached earlier, but often it's at that point that they would actually start, you know, both the network executive and the writer, creator of the show would start picking all the people who are going to be involved. So, you know, all the department heads and the director and the talent and all of that. So.
And tell us for Bored to Death, from the gem of the idea to premiere, about how long?
With Bored to Death, it was about, to premiere. Okay, wait a second.
To us being able to see.
Yeah, to premiere, it was about 2 years. And partly that was also because of the writer's strike, which happened, which was about 3 months long. Yes, but from idea to pilot was only a year, which is pretty typical.
But each, you know, network is set up so differently these days. I mean, you have the networks, you have NBC, CBS, ABC, and Fox, and then you have all of cable. And then all of cable is divided up between the sort of the basic cable and then the pay cable like HBO, Showtime, Starz. And so each of their processes are going to be slightly different too. I mean, I'm working on something now with USA. And by the way, one of the shows that I work on that I help was Royal Pains, and another one was Warehouse 13. Both of those were bought and owned by NBC Universal, which also then became Universal Media Studios, which also holds Universal Cable Productions within it, which is an arm that then goes to its networks that it actually owns, USA and Sci-Fi, to pitch shows. So if that sounds confusing, imagine what it's like when you actually have a show and you're trying to use all these elements. The funny thing is they treat each other as if they don't know who each other are, and that like they've never met each other before sometimes. I mean, there's great relationships, but it's not like, oh, like, because I always try to remind them, oh, don't you own those guys? Don't you want to just tell them to make your show? But it doesn't work that way. But anyways, so yeah, I'm working on something now where the writer went in with an idea, and I went with him, and he had actually created this sort of dog and pony show, and that's becoming a very popular thing to do now, where there's a lot of graphics, and this show was. I guess the line is Ally McBeal with a gun. And so he had as a little graphic of Ally McBeal, and he did a funny little thing with her, and it's all for entertainment value, but it also just sort of helps in sort of creating an entertaining 10 to 25 minutes of pitching, too. And pitching is quite an art, and it's way beyond me because I'm not a writer, but these guys have to sort of hone their pitching style and presentation because that matters a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it's again, depending on the place, it matters more and more. But yes, I do think that. I mean, it's hard because I think some writers are really good at that. I mean, some writers have backgrounds in stand-up comedy and are performers, and it comes very easy to them. And some writers are not. Some writers are novelists or
Sheltered hobbits.
Sheltered hobbits. Yeah. And so I think that does become, unfortunately, it's a very important piece of the process, is kind of the presentation and performance of the pitch often. And so that is, sometimes the pitch can be fantastic and the script not so fantastic. You know what I mean? I mean, I would say I've been in the business about 22 years, and I feel like, I used to think more that I could, I really know based on the pitch, like how it's going to turn out. And, I think that I have found over time is less and less true. I mean, it can be, the greatest pitch, not turn out so well. It can be something that seems, maybe a little bit dull or a little bit something, but the writer is so amazing that, when you get it on the page, it's actually amazing,
And
so.
Victor, for a broadcast show, are there any caveats to add or differences from what we're hearing up here about cable?
I mean, a little bit. I mean, like Jason was saying, I mean, every place is different. I mean, you're just not going to, every room's going to be different. There's going to be some places there's going to be one person you're pitching to. There's one you're going to pitch to marketing, the casting director. You're going to have all these people that you're going to have to do a dog and pony show, like he says. I mean, the one thing I can say, especially for you guys, if you start thinking about pitching, is really think about, you got to find that idea that you are in love with, that you'll go to the grave for. A lot of mistakes would happen. Everybody comes in, with like 8 pitches, and that's not what they want to see. They want to see you come in and die for that one pitch. They know that you're going to go, like I said, to the grave with that pitch. So when you guys think of your ideas, have your 5 ideas, but know which one's the best. Which is the one that that you can sell the heart and soul for, because that's what they have to get out of it. And a marketing guy, and then and the casting person, and then the executive producer, and the people that are part of the money. So if you don't sell to all those people, and everyone's going to be in a different mood and a different, and you don't know who you're pitching to, but you got to be focused, and there's something about that, and that's why a lot of times if you do have a writer that's a hobbit and stuff, you might bring somebody in that's a director or maybe another writer that can really explain what's going on, and this is what the show's going to look like, and this is what we're going to do. We're going to blow this up, and that way they get excited and they all get pumped up. Because that's what they want to hear. They want to know that what you're going to come in with is going to, pretty much make them money. Is what it comes down to.
No, but I think that's true, that the genuine excitement actually goes a very long way. I mean, meaning that ultimately, it sounds silly or something, or sounds naive or something, but I do think that kind of real belief in your own project and also real knowledge about it. I mean, often, at least at HBO, I know that usually what sells the project is the person's passion, and also their real in-depth knowledge of the piece, in a way that they've really thought about it for quite some time, so that any question that comes up in the meeting, they really have a thoughtful answer for.
Yeah, and I think it's not just the writer, too, because sometimes the writer does get accompanied by a producer in the pitch, or in my case, a director, producer, and everybody in the room has to believe that it is the most important thing in the world at that moment. I learned a big lesson when I was younger, and I went up for a film for Disney, And I remember the guy sitting across the desk from me, and he was smiling, and I had read it, and it was a pretty crappy script. And I remember it ended up being, if anybody saw it, who's that great funny actor, Harlan Williams? And he dressed up like a woman to be a headmistress of a school. And you know what that movie is, right? So, and I wanted the job, sure, but I was like, yeah, well, you know. And I was like, it's okay, right? And that's not what he wanted to hear at all. He wanted me to go, man, this is going to be awesome. It's going to be the funniest movie we've ever seen. We're going to get him in a dress like Mrs. Doubtfire and you know, and really sell it. And that was the last time that I equivocated about anything in a room, because you really got to you got to love it. And if you don't, if it's more of a job thing, then you still got to love it more than anything in the whole wide world.
I pitched Hung 2 years ago, and they didn't believe it at all. So they looked at me and said, nah, that's not going to happen. No.
But 100